over to John Moody, our esteemed moderator. If you could introduce yourself and have the rest of your panel, we'll get started.
My name is John Moody Jr. I'm the manager of Moody Law Group, which is a small law firm here in Houston that specializes in commercial real estate.
William Carter, I'm the president of WC Construction.
Lisa Nicholson French. I am a corporate managing director at Savills.
Amy Figg, senior leasing agent. I'm with Hartman Management.
Larry Sloan, Midway Companies, executive vice president of development.
I'm Aaron Theorn with Trammell Crow Company. I'm a managing director responsible for office development business here in the Houston market.
I'm Bob Cromwell with Moody Rambin, managing director, active in the office leasing space.
Well, as always, Bisnow has put together a great panel, and I think everybody's here to try to figure out what is going on in the office market currently and where is it headed. With all this flight to quality and the hybrid work environment, how has the Houston, quote, return to office scenario actually played out in comparison to what landlords and tenants and companies were really expecting?
Well, I'll start. I mean, I think it played out much slower than I thought it was going to. It took a lot longer than I thought for people to start returning to work. But luckily, what we're seeing now is more leasing activity. People are actually making decisions now, where everything was on hold during the pandemic for the most part. We have people that are, growing in different ways, but they're actually making decisions and looking at their hybrid work environment to move forward.
We thrive in community, and I think employees and executives are aware that we need variety in our lives. People want to get back to work. We cannot work at home, play at home, raise our families, go to church at home, have the gym at home. It creates boredom. So I think employees and executives see that, and they're eager to get back to work and into the office environment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add, I think that, and this is probably a common theme through a lot of the discussion today, there's really in Houston and in office in general, it's haves and have-nots. And so, what employers are looking for and understand now is you need to provide really a highly amenitized workplace and give employees a reason to want to come to work. And that's really evidenced here. I mean, you look at downtown CBD, and we'll talk a little about it, but I think physical occupancy is probably around 50% right now. And when you look at suburban and specifically mixed use, that's far higher. I think city center, we don't track occupancy in terms of parking as close as others do, but we're estimating we're probably 70% physical, 75, 80% physical. And but we're 100% in terms of offices open and back, and I think that's not the same in all places. And so I think when we talk about some of these things, we need to break it out in terms of different components of office, not just office in general.
So, kind of on the capital market side, what are the investors who are the investors in this market, and what kind of are the opportunities that are out there, and what are investors looking for kind of in today's environment?
I guess I'll jump and take that one. The first thing I'd mention is really the type of buyer or type of investors in the market are having a major impact on just the overall velocity of activity, the pricing, and what we've seen, I think, is really that the kind of the historical core buyers in Houston are kind of out of the market. So, you don't have a really deep bench of advisors or pension funds, big life insurance companies, and the foreign capital really isn't here either right now. So those were the types of buyers that had really driven the valuations, through the last cycle, kind of pre-pandemic. And what we're seeing now are really more of the private buyers and the opportunistic buyers that are in the market. And really, I think the fundamental issue for them is that they're levered for the most part. And so, any buyer who is putting debt on a property is obviously underwriting that asset based on the cost of debt. And, one thing I've always heard is equity prices real estate, but then debt prices equity. So really debt prices real estate. And the Fed hasn't done us any favors with their rate hikes, and it's hard to buy an office building at a 5 cap when you're borrowing capital at a 6% rate of return. So, that's had a big fundamental issue on it. But, the first thing I think that happens in an environment like this is just transactions just sort of slow down. you know, and there's this sort of time period where just, you know, transaction activity drops tremendously, and there's this kind of wait and see game that's played as things kind of price themselves out and spreads tighten, and anyway, you get to a kind of a point of equilibrium where transactions start to happen again. You know, but one thing I'll say that I think we'll see, you know, the next year is there's a number of deals that are out there that are really, you know, valued below the level of the current debt. And so, you know, lenders, I think, are going to start to force some transactions. And you already saw that with, you know, 55 San Felipe, and there's some other sizable deals. So I think we're going to see some larger transactions that are going to hit the market at an inopportune time from a pricing perspective, really driven primarily by the lender of that asset. So, you know, one other thing I'll add is just, we're going to talk a lot about it today, but just quality assets. I mean, the opportunistic buyers used to have to play in sort of a lower quality space, but now they can play in a high quality space. So until deals like that transact, I think we're going to see most of the transactions happening at the large, you know, at the higher quality type product as opposed to sort of the B- or C product. So anyway, just a few thoughts.
Well, so what are some unexpected things that you guys have seen this year kind of in the office market?
You know, what's been interesting is the Western migration. You know, when we started touring tenants, you know, kind of during the pandemic, you know, a few of them were downtown. I said, well, you're looking out west, and it was all about the commute. And, you know, you would think that, you know, when tenants have been in a certain submarket a long period of time and they decide to move a Bechtel, Apache, Enbridge, these are big moves, and they're all going west to get closer to their employees. And, you know, and they're all right-sizing at the same time. So it's been interesting to see that, especially like a Bechtel that's been in a certain submarket for 35, 40 years, make a move west. And I think you're going to see some tenants come out of downtown to the Galleria. You're going to see tenants from Galleria go west. And, you know, we saw that, you know, when the Beltway went in years ago, the migration out of the Galleria. So that's been interesting to watch.
I'd like to piggyback on that. I've been in landlord leasing for 13 years, and 9 times out of 10 on every single tour, people are saying, I'm tired of my commute. I want to live closer to home. And as this city continues to expand and grow, my portfolio is mainly in the energy corridor, and we are full. So all of the Katy employees, executives, they want to be in Park 10. They don't want to commute down to the Galleria. They don't want to be inside the loop. So that is something to consider also. People want accessibility, and they want to be close to their families so they don't have to spend a lot of time commuting each and every day.
But I'd add too, I think even with Bob, it's a great point. And when we talk about west, right, there's west of 610 and then east of Beltway 8, which is a submarket called Katy Freeway East, and then there's West Chase, and which picks up Energy Corridor and these other pieces. And that Katy Freeway East section, when it was lumped in with all of West Houston, was sitting at a really high vacancy rate in terms of the submarket. When you broke it out its own submarket, which is now classified as in most surveys, is like mid-90s, I think, low 90s% occupied. When you go out and lump the Energy Corridor in it, you could be 25, 30% vacant. And so it's still I think a progression of, you know, commoditized assets, which could just be located on a freeway, and there's really nothing else going on with it, versus being well located and having a complete experience in terms of what it is. And, you know, all of the projects, you know, Bob's project just down the road from us, City Center, certainly Metro as well. You know, there's a bigger offering in terms of what's in those locations, and it's playing through in the occupancy rates too.
I would say for me, it's been the right sizing. I mean, we've been talking about it forever, but people are actually doing it. And when I practiced law 17 years ago, so law firms talked about right sizing when I got into the business 17 years ago, but now they're actually really doing it. I mean, look at V&E, you know, going from 400,000 to 200,000. And the portfolio clients that I work with, they're all looking at their offices and saying, okay, partners, you know, we know you like your corner office, but we're not doing it anymore. We're going to standardize the offices. They're just actually doing it, which has been very surprising to me. And a lot of it is being done so that they can go to better buildings. They want to go to the best buildings that they can. So the smaller footprint that they have, then the more they can afford. That has been a big move.
I'll just add one thing to that, sorry. The best example I can think of is our building in the Energy Corridor. So we leased 100% of the building to McDermott. And then fast forward 18 months, McDermott doesn't need all the space. So then we turn around and they sublease 60% of the building to Enbridge. Enbridge moves out of 5400 Westheimer. So you've got a brand new building that was 100% leased, that now has 2 tenants in it that are still 100% leased. And we got 630,000 feet of negative absorption in the Galleria. So like you compound that times, the whole entire market, and it's just a massive, massive compression play. I mean, everybody wants to be in the best buildings, and so you just have this stair-step effect. So, you can't really look at the statistics of the overall market and get like a good indication of kind of the health of the market, because in that instance I just described, 630,000 feet of negative absorption. Statistically speaking, that's a big black eye on the Galleria market. But really, it's showing that flight to quality phenomenon that we're all talking about. And so I guess my point is, we just need to keep building good buildings.
Well, Aaron, to your point, though.
I'm not sure what my point is.
Well, to your point, look at what they've done downtown with Houston Center and Allen Center. These are older buildings, complexes, and they've put millions and millions of dollars into them to keep up with the new Texas Tower, 609, 811. So, even the old buildings are getting a little bit of a shine put on them because people want the amenities. They want the green space. They want the beautiful lobbies. They want the restaurants. And that is driving people back to work, too.
I think the big takeaway is, and I don't believe this was always the case, but I believe now tenants are investing to be in the best space that they can afford. And that was not always the trend. Value. Now they value really the employee and what's going on in those experiences. And so it may not be the brand new trophy tower. It may not be, the most infill mixed use project, but they're going to go where they can afford the best product, which is a different conversation than it was 3 years ago.
So we've kind of talked about trends and kind of what's happening now. And so, maybe we bring out the magic 8-ball and look out into the future. And what do we think is going to continue to happen over the next 12 to 18 months?
That's a loaded question, John.
I went all the way to the end.
So, it's interesting. You're seeing this contraction. A year ago, you were reading, about how hybrid and remote. Now you're reading more articles about productivity, and everybody's right-sizing. And we look up 18 months from now, and, it was interesting. EOG announced with their renewal that they're 100% back in the office in that press release. So if you got an energy company that's full back, 100%, you got another one that's, 3.2, this is gonna play out, I think. And I think some people are gonna look up and go, what'd we do, personally?
Yeah. So, I agree. I think it's we keep using the word right sizing. I think tenants are absolutely resizing. But I think some are gonna undershoot in a real way as these productivity numbers continue to play out. And we're seeing, tenants try and hedge on that too right now, looking for, maybe not wanting to be in a single tenant building, but a building where there's a little bit of expansion space that goes along with that, and pushing landlords to look at some spec delivery as a component of that, because they're not really sure. And I think that's, it's going to play out. Some folks that I've talked to and you guys have heard from, certainly on the tenant rep side, are starting to see the cracks on that a little bit too. And so it'll be really interesting to watch. But I think over the next 18 months, we're going to learn a lot more in terms of what right size is, because we're still early innings of coming out of this.
So decision makers are consolidating and reimagining their footprint, which is allowing more flexibility in the workplace for employees to come and go, maybe not have their own private office, but have a place where they can come on a weekly basis and plug in to a cube. So what we do at Hartman is create spaces that are 50% office and 50% open. And I'm seeing a lot of tours really appreciating that option. And I think that's what set us apart from our competitors in many ways.
I will say, I think that there is a strong component. People, when all this started, when COVID started, everybody was like, the office is gone. People are not going to go to work. But people want to be around other people, to your point earlier. But also, there is a transfer of knowledge that we're missing for the younger brokers, lawyers, professionals. They need to have these senior leaders in the office transferring the knowledge that they have that you don't learn in school. You don't learn in law school, you don't learn in undergraduate or graduate school. And just having that is invaluable. And I know, again, talking about law firms, though, because I do some of that work, they really are concerned about the transfer of knowledge to their young lawyers. You go to law school, you get out of law school, you don't know anything. John and I were talking about this. You don't know what you're doing. You have to learn from people that are senior to you. So that is really important. And having a culture within a company, companies want to have a culture, and you have to be in the office to feed that culture and to grow it. So I think it's really important. I never thought that there would not be a situation where we would have office space or that people were going to work remotely completely. I think that the companies that have done that have already stated their position. That's done. I think going forward, we will see maybe some more flexibility from employers in letting their maybe people work from home a day or two a week, but they still have to have space for people to come into, even if they're only going in 3 days a week. So the footprints shrinking, in my opinion, really are more about right-sizing and flight to quality than they are about people just having this hybrid work where people are just not coming in at all.
I think the good thing is that we've learned from this that the office market is not going away. People have to be in offices for those reasons you just mentioned. And I think that there was a lot of uncertainty about lead times and material prices and things like that, which slowed things. The days of $60 to $65 a square foot getting you a decent office space are gone, unfortunately. But the good news is things have started to level off. We've got focus areas such as plastic products, millwork. You've got HVAC units, panel boards, things like that we have to jump on board early and plan for. But overall, the situation is improving.
Yeah, and I'll just say about being in the office versus being home, it's like, yes, I can negotiate a lease for my house, but when I'm in the office, I get probably 30, 40 questions a day from the people I work with and from my paralegals, from my lawyers, and it's just amazing how much more productive it is to actually be present.
It sounds like the legal is similar to, I heard somebody say it during the pandemic in terms of real estate, there's really no real estate savants, right? I mean, the only way you learn this is being in and doing it experiences. And so you can't accomplish that not being around, and learning really by osmosis and what you see and experience. So,
yeah, for sure. So kind of transitioning is now, like today, a good time to buy and develop, office in Houston? And if so, what types of office properties are you guys looking for?
So I missed the prep call, so I got handed this question. And I went down the list and said, all right, no, but, in terms of, things to buy and invest in out there, I mean, Aaron touched on it. I think there are some good value plays, but you just have to be really cognizant about what that bet is. I mean, there's frankly office properties here in Houston right now that have zero value. By the time you invest in the repositioning, the tenant improvements that carry on it, where you need to get to cover debt service, it just doesn't work. And so just because something looks cheap doesn't necessarily mean it's a good value. But there are good value options out there. And so we're seeing some of those transactions take place. On the development side, there's a lot happening. I mean, everybody's touched on it up here. There's the headlines and there's the vacancy headlines that, all the core institutional investors pick up and love to point to when you have conversations on a capital market side. But there's really a lot happening behind the scenes and a lot of things that are continue to be announced out there as it relates to mixed use, our East River project, specifically, you know, we're fielding, actually between that and City Center, I think 4 very large users that are very focused on right sizing and getting into mixed use properties. And so, you know, the development side, developers, you know, and to your point on debt prices, equity, and then equity, you know, how it flows through this capital there. You know, there are development opportunities. I mean, it's far less speculative today than it was in the past. Debt's harder to come by. But, you know, in all of those instances, there's good opportunities to develop as well. You just have to be cognizant about delivering what the tenant wants and, you know, being disciplined in how you execute it.
I mean, I'd add to that a lot of what you're seeing is just a little bit more scalable in terms of just, you know, more of a horizontal development plan. You know, you've got more projects that are in, you know, urban environments that have, you know, walkable retail amenities nearby that, you know, I'm not sure tenants have quite the desire to be in a 1 million square foot tower than they did 5 or 10 years ago. So, I mean, I think you see a lot of tenants migrating from a downtown environment to, you know, more of an infill urban experience that's got neighboring retail. I mean, a couple of examples I could think of is, you know, what you see in Edo, what you're seeing in the Sawyer Yards area, you know, what Rice is working on around the Ion District. I mean, I think product like that is desirable because it's modern and it's efficient and it's got great amenities that are walkable and it doesn't require driving up a 10-level parking structure for $400 a month and paying for parking every day, or, you know, just it's more accessible, easier to get in and out. It's got more, you know, livable opportunities that are nearby, and I think we're going to see more and more of that kind of products. One, because it's what the tenants want, and two, because it's easier to capitalize because the overall size of the deals aren't as large.
Yeah, and just on a trend real quick, sorry, Rob, I'll keep it short, but, you know, and East River is an example of this. I mean, that connection to that green space too. I mean, what was just announced on the east sector of Houston from BBP and the trail system and all of those components and how that's going to impact that side of town. But from a trend perspective, it's what are you providing in your offices? I mean, in our offices they're certainly lower density and scale. We're also, you know, we're putting showers, right? So that tenants can actually go out, exercise, you know, use the trail systems, use other pieces, connect to the green spaces, those components of it, showers. You know, that just whole idea of putting natural light. And you guys did a great job over at TC1 on your office tower. But, you know, daylighting your stairs so tenants want to use those different pieces. There's just, you know, I don't know about y'all, but I saw more people riding bikes during COVID than, I mean, I didn't even know these people lived in my neighborhood. And so, you know, I think people are reconnected to the outdoors, and I think that's a trend that we should really lean into when we're planning stuff.
So I think that those are true statements, but I also think that there is a type of company or firm that wants to be in a CBD. You're always going to have it. Texas Tower is leasing up very quickly. Their asking rates are astronomical for what we've seen in Houston traditionally. 609 Main is full. 811 Main is pretty full. The new B of A tower is pretty full, if not completely full, with just spatters of space. So I do think that there is a type of company that is always going to want to be downtown, and they are going to flock to these premier buildings. So just had to defend the CBD a little bit.
And I'd add it's interesting because, you know, we had to get debt for our new building that we're going up with. And when I took Katy Freeway West, Energy Corridor, and East, and then you bifurcated it by buildings that were 10 years, built in the last 10 years versus, you know, prior to that, single-digit occupancies. So again, the flight to quality's there. You know, where do they want to be as far as development? I mean, Metro Nationals just topped out their building and it's full. It's done. And so that ecosystem that exists, and we're going to have to rename Katy Freeway East. That's not a good representative of what's happening there, but it's all your amenities are there, your area amenities are there, and I think that's where you're going to be seeing development. Even like Montrose, you know, I was like, who wants to office at Montrose and Westheimer? It's full. It is full. And so I think those are the type of developments you're going to see going forward. And, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. I know we're doing a residential conversion downtown, but what you also have to remember is we so overbuilt this city in the 80s. And we did not build anything from 1986, basically, till almost 2000. So we have this gap where other cities continue to develop. And in this older stock that we have, the 80s vintage Class A buildings, they're just not getting any looks at all. And I'm concerned about downtown because you have a lot of them down there. So it's going to be interesting to see.
So the next question is about relocation, and I'm not talking about somebody picking up from downtown Houston and moving west. This is more about companies in other locations picking up and moving their headquarters. And Austin, Dallas have done a great job getting major companies to move to their cities. Question is kind of like, why is Houston not capturing some of those big corporate relocations?
So, I don't think it's the labor pool. We rank in the top 3 Sunbelt cities in professional, the number of professionals we have here, the college educated, the 4-year degree and up, as well as blue collar labor. So we have all of that going for us. I think that perhaps it could be a matter of incentives. Maybe we need to strengthen our incentives to have people move here. But the labor pool is very good in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about all the reasons that there's great things to offer. I mean, we have the largest medical center in the world. We have, from a workforce, to your point, I mean, highly educated workforce. I mean, what happens with energy today and the caliber of the engineers and the knowledge and the technology supplied and all that, it's a really heavy technology business that they're in now too. So I mean, we really have all of those pieces. I think it's just marketing that. I mean, we do need to continue. I think the world's learning right now. You can't decouple from fossil fuels as quickly as they thought they could. But it's very real from a capital perspective, very real. From a lender perspective, these other pieces, this ESG initiative is real, and how we frame the narrative in Houston, because we're not just an energy city, is really important to attracting those tenants. Because I think that's still providing some real headwinds in what we're trying to do.
Well, okay, we'll move on to the next question. This is something we've kind of touched on, and it's about the increase and really the trend to kind of the hybrid model, the remote work, and how is this impacting current office leasing and the market, and what do we think's coming up over the next couple of years?
So,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Bob.
No, it's been interesting. Again, hybrid work. I mean, what is that? And so, everybody has pontificated about what that looks like. And, we've spoken to right sizing. That's really what's happened with it. All the surveys show that no one likes sharing a desk. They want to have their space when they come in. And so, again, I'm in the brokerage business, where a lot of us are independent contractors, and we've been hybrid. We're not in the office. If you're sitting in your office all day, every day, you're not doing what you need to do. So, but I do think that over the next 12 to 18 months, like we talked about, we're going to get some clarity. This time last year, where we are today, you wouldn't have seen it. And so, but I do think personally, I think there's going to be more pressure to get people back. That's why they are upgrading their spaces, amenitizing their spaces to get people to come back. This is an employee-driven recovery, which we've never had. And so now you've got recessionary, pressures coming in. And if I'm sitting at home and my company's going to start laying people off, well, who's first? So it's just going to be interesting to see. We're in a space that we've never been in. And so, when the pandemic happened, I was like, oh, retail, hotels, they're dead. No, they've all recovered. And so here we are with the office market, and everybody's still trying to figure it out.
I mean, I think, to your point, yeah, people are coming, employers want employees to come in. But I think that we talked about, amenities for buildings and people trying to go to highly amenitized buildings, but also the spaces within the buildings have changed. People are looking for more of a hotel feel, even within their offices. They want collaboration areas, soft seating, things that, you wouldn't have even thought to talk about maybe 10 years ago, even 7 years ago. That's kind of a big deal. I know in our office at Savills, we've got several collaborative areas in some of the best parts of the office where we can just sit and talk and collaborate. And business is transacted that way, and ideas are come up with that way. So I think that employees are looking for that, but I do think to Bob's point, with this recession talk, the people that are staying home, I've read, are probably getting worried about if there are layoffs, that they would be the first, and it does make sense. I mean, you know, when you're in front of somebody, it just makes you more memorable and obviously, I think, more productive.
I think the trend too, it's about the function of the job. I mean, I do think when these companies are downsizing and right-sizing what's going on, there are functions that in technology has proven that can be done remotely, and that cuts occupancy costs in a very real way. And those tenants don't necessarily have to be in the office for their productivity to be monitored, if that's, you know, if there is like a big brother looking over it. But so I think some of that hybrid is going to be a permanent type piece. But I think if you have to collaborate, if you have to be creative, if you have to do those other pieces, it's going to continue. And to your point, you know, and I am a cynic in terms of the work from home. We're actually a work from work company. But you know, the reality is that as these productivity numbers come through, and the flex Monday and the flex Friday turn into 4-day weekends, which a lot of that probably is, it's putting a real cramp on things, and so we're going to see that tighten up more as this plays out.
And employees have figured out those who show up go up, and out of sight, out of mind. So the first people that are going to be considered for promotions are going to be the ones that are in the office. So I think our workforce has recognized that.
We've definitely seen some changes in the design. Employers are trying to bridge the gap between these employees that it's hard to find good help, so it's competitive. And so you got to find a way to make people want to come to the office. So we're seeing game rooms with ping pong tables and shuffleboard tables. We're seeing lounges. We're seeing stuff that we wouldn't have seen a few years ago that kind of bridge that gap between home and office in the design. There's also a big move to incorporate more AV. Obviously, our world is so technology driven, but now they're having to communicate with people that are working remote, and some of them that are on site. So we're seeing a big push to technology, and that's something from a construction side we always put on the back burner, and it's something that needs to be focused on up front, because that can bite us as far as getting back boxes and having to leave walls open and stuff like that. So there's a push to technology as well.
Oh, absolutely. So next question, I think, is for you as well. It's about how are the supply chain and inflation issues impacting construction and renovations?
It's still impacting us. So it's not as bad as it was 12, 24 months ago, of course. Lead times have come down. The changing prices every 10 to 15 days that we were seeing last year has subdued. But I will say that it's shown a much bigger focus, bringing the GC, I don't want to sound like a GC saying this, but bring the GC on early. Get your design team and your GC in the same room to help kind of steer that design, to make sure you're choosing products that you can get in time, products that you may find an alternate to that can save a little money. Budget and lead time are always going to be an issue, but they're more so now. We're even taking that step further. We have subcontractors that are coming in, at the SD stage and helping guide those decisions, as well as getting a jump on ordering materials, getting millwork shop drawings done before the drawings are complete, ordering MEP systems off of a basis of design so that your units and panel boards are sitting here waiting for you when you get the permit.
Yeah, I've noticed with my developer clients that everybody's trying to pre-order steel, pre-order materials. It's just the first draw is very different than it used to be. All right, we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about submarkets, specifically Woodlands and West Houston versus downtown. We've kind of touched on that a little bit. So okay, sorry, I got lost a little bit. So folks, we're hearing folks that want to park downtown, and parking has such a big impact, or is that helping with the submarkets? Kind of talk about the difference between the Woodlands and West Houston versus CBD.
Well, it's definitely CBD, I'll take that. I mean, it's definitely an issue. It is expensive, and people are trying to make their offices more dense, as we talked about, the right sizing. So then it comes to the parking ratios. The parking ratios downtown are not large, and it's expensive. So it's something that you have to deal with, but there is plenty of parking in the CBD. You might just have to walk from a garage, not park in your building in most cases. But I do think that is something that's attractive to people that are going out west. It's easier to park. It's free to park.
Definitely.
A lot of times. So, but it's just a function of the CBD.
It's the commute and the parking. It's the gas, and it's paying for parking. Those are two pains that immediately I overcome when they walk through the door. Yes, and traffic.
I think it's going to be interesting to watch the parking side, and on the development front, it always starts with parking, right? It just does. What can I park here? How does that function, and how does it work? With this whole, and we talked about the flexible work environment, these other pieces too. I mean, the tenants are still demanding, they want 3+, 3.5, asking for 4 per thousand, but they're gonna rotate and have tenants in, on probably a 70% physical occupancy. So, we have to be careful right now too. We talked about, ride sharing and that impact on parking and all of those pieces, but I think that we haven't really figured out how tenants, what their real demand is for parking right now. And so that's a tough thing when you're planning a building to not, parking's expensive, to not overbuild parking and try and hit what that demand is, but we still haven't figured that piece of it out either. But, so it's a challenge to whether you're in the CBD or really anywhere, it's expensive.
I'd add that when you speak to the Woodlands, it's interesting because the Woodlands is zoned. And so when you go up there, the retail's where it's supposed to be, the hospital. And so, and that's why I think the Woodlands does get a lot of relocations to Houston, because when people go up there, it feels like home, because most communities are zoned. And so I think the Woodlands, they got a good school district, is always going to do good. I think West Houston, Katy is one of the top school districts in the state. And so, I think that's always going to drive that demand. I've never officed downtown. Lisa, you do. But, downtown is interesting in that all the major banks are there, the law firms, accounting firms, where, like in Dallas, they all vacated downtown. And so I think you're always going to have a good ecosystem down there. I'm just concerned about the 80s vintage buildings that are sitting empty right now.
And getting people out of the tunnel too, right? Getting a live, active streetscape. The city's done a good job of getting people living down there, and we're starting to see that. It's certainly hit a major pause with the pandemic, but that has to become an active. The tunnel systems, we've talked about it many times here in Houston, but that's a killer for the downtown environment and that overall experience. It's great when it's hot outside, but to feel like a vibrant ecosystem, it's hard to overcome that.
I think it's changed down there. You look at Texas Tower, that they didn't put any retail in their tunnel. They put it all up at street level. You look at Houston Center and what they've done to add retail on the ground level. So
It's going the
I think
right
it's
way.
definitely the trend is headed in the right direction downtown for retail. I just want to see a lot of it come back that got impacted by the pandemic, because that really did kind of kill some of the momentum.
All right, next question is about competitive advantage. So kind of what's the keys to being one step ahead of the game in today's office market, specifically for you guys? What is your competitive advantage?
Being ready. So when I have a tour, what has set me apart from my competitors is the spaces are move-in ready, brand new finishes. They don't have to imagine it. They don't have to visualize it. The work is already done. So that to me has been what has made us thrive as a management company. And we outperformed all of our competitors by 35%, and I truly believe it's because of those spaces that Hartman has invested in prior to leasing, because I'm not familiar with many owners, if any, that do that, who install new finishes, paint, LED lights, LVP flooring, new break rooms, so they sparkle and shine. And I think that has been the story of our success.
You were co-working before co-working was cool.
Thank you.
I mean, maybe we can all answer that a little bit. I'm going to drive mixed use and experiential real estate. I mean, I think we're seeing that play out right now as a core advantage.
Okay, well,
I would say from a tenant rep perspective, for me personally, it is just really listening to your clients. Not presuming that you know where they should be or what they should look like, because everything is changing, and especially now with everything changing, listening very closely and working, with them in a creative way to try to make sure that their needs are met and not just what you think they should have.
so I just got the 5-minute warning. That's why I was looking at my phone to make sure Kim wasn't texting me to say wrap this up. But so we got one more question, and it's about what is the key to breaking the standstill and get people, kind of back into the office and get the office market going again.
Another loaded one. Get back to work. I would say it's a standstill because there's leasing velocity. It's just that people are right-sizing, going from 400 to 250. And so, while that's happening, we just need to get everybody back to work.
Yeah.
Aaron, didn't you say on our practice panel that a recession would be something that would certainly spur people back to work? People get nervous about their jobs, getting laid off. I think that if we do have a recession, which none of us wants a recession, but I do think that would get more people going to work regularly as well.
We could definitely use some inbound corporate relocations. The Chevron flirting with moving out of California to Houston would be a huge impact for downtown. I think that what got us here in some respects was a lot of the merger, the M&A activity in the energy business. I mean, the Anadarko Oxy merger was a huge impact to the Woodlands, and there's been a number of those that have happened, and those have kind of slowed a little bit. It'd be great to see, the energy business kind of get some momentum, even if it's even if it's an alternatives or green tech type energy growth would be a big driver. I mean, you look at like Greentown Labs and what they're doing, and some of the companies that are spinning out of that. I mean, that's a big driver. I mean, a lot of the private equity, energy-related private equity firms in Houston have a green tech, climate tech strategy. SCF is one that comes to mind that's really active in that space. NCAP is in that space. I mean, so I think we're going to see more companies that are going to be growing in that element, which is a technology-oriented business. So I'm optimistic that will continue, and those type of companies will actually flourish here, because that is the type of technology-oriented tenant that would be great to grow in this market.
Yeah, and last thing I would say is that standstill is really a headline. I mean, the reality is Houston's not in a standstill right now. There's a lot happening, and there's going to be a lot that's announced over the next 12 to 18 months, too. And so we're absolutely headed in the right direction. I mean, the economic headwinds certainly will prove challenging, and that'll play out, but we're not in a standstill right now in any way, shape, or form. It just looks different, and there's a lot of vacancy for a lot of reasons and a lot of obsolescence out there, too.
One thing we can all do is show up and vote. Those decisions at the voting polls affect our future, and I think that we can see that now.
Anybody have any last remarks? No? Okay. Well, thanks to the panel. Thanks to Bisnow.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause? Thank you all for taking your time. That was an amazing conversation. And with that, I will now, Grant from the video, begin. Moderate. If you'll introduce yourself and have your panel do the rest, we'll get started.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Oh, thank you for our response. That's always a good start there. As Kim said, my name is Grant Canning. I'm our Vice President of Sales with Core Office Interiors here in Houston. We are a FF&T provider, service-disabled, veteran-owned company specializing in furniture, pre-manufactured walls, and technology, AV technology integration in the Houston market. We also service Austin and San Antonio as well. Super honored to be here today. We've got a phenomenal group of panelists here with incredible perspectives on our industry. And a really unique topic as we head into some interesting times as a city And we're going to get started here. We'll allow them to introduce themselves, and we'll get rolling into our panel. Ryan, we'll go ahead and start with yourself.
Morning, everybody. Ryan Lavasser with Rice Management Company. We are the investment arm of Rice University, and we oversee direct real estate, which includes the Ion District and Rice Village. Glad to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephanie Burrett. I am the co-managing principal for the Bisnow Houston office. And I actually occasionally bump into people who don't know who Gensler is. So it's an architecture and design firm, for those of you who don't know.
I'm Matt Reagan. I'm a director of property programming with Reeby's. We're a small creative real estate development group focusing on mixed-use developments and incorporating hospitality, whether it's into retail ground planes or into office or even now residential.
Yeah, good morning. My name is John Leggett. I'm the founder and managing partner of Leggett Ventures. We're a real estate and energy private equity company founded here in Houston, and primarily the Texas markets. We, on the commercial real estate side, we brand under Newfound Partners, and we'll do anything that's path and progress or anything opportunistic on the real estate side. So don't really pigeonhole ourselves into one corner, so we do a little bit of everything.
Good morning. My name is Meredith Wheeler, and I'm the co-founder of Sesh Co-working. We're a co-working space located in Midtown, and we specialize in providing workspace and community to women, to communities of color, and to the LGBT community. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. What an interesting topic we have today, right? As the first panel kind of alluded to, we're in a very unique time as a city, as a country. And so what does the future of the office look like, right? The last 18 to 24 months have been nothing but a whirlwind for all of us. However, that's kind of led us to the discussion today. Now, Stephanie, I'm going to start with you. You and Gensler have been a part of some monumental projects pre-COVID, post-COVID, starting very broadly here. How is the office evolving, and how are you accounting for this in your developments, your designs, and just projects as a whole?
You know, that's a great question, and actually one we're still trying to figure out every day, as we heard in the previous panel. But the office certainly is evolving, and we're watching daily through research and data gathering, people's behaviors, just to see how to anticipate what's coming next. And it is changing rapidly, but the piece that we're watching probably most closely is the culture of whatever organization it is that we're working with, and trying to really understand that so we can best accommodate that through the design of our projects.
John, how about y'all's group? You do a lot of risk analysis and a lot of analytics behind your group. What are y'all seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing here in Houston right now is we're redeveloping a 30,000-foot warehouse over in Spring Branch. And it's interesting, before we started construction on it, we're obviously moving our company in there. Another private equity company is moving in as well. And trying to understand like who we're really trying to attract was a lot of what we talked about. So it's like you build out the space and like what type of person is going to want to be here. And we ended up narrowing it down, of all things, like to medical and also to other energy companies or other financial companies. And that's exactly who keeps looking at the building. And it's like, it's all first floor, surface parking. You know, our sales pitch to some of the private equity guys has been like, look, you can go downtown, you know, you can fight the traffic, you can park in a parking garage, and you can walk 15 minutes and sweat to death on the way to the elevator. It takes you to the lobby, that takes you to another elevator. It might even be another elevator. Now you've forgotten something in your car, and you got another 30 minutes back down. So it's like, so the sales pitch is actually kind of starting to work and attract some family offices and other people that want to be like-minded in the area. So you create, you know, the culture kind of the building has kind of become like, well, I want to be with people that we make and share ideas and stuff too. So it's interesting how that has evolved for us.
Some of you are involved on the leasing side of our industry. Many of us on this stage and in this room are basically serving as consultants to our clients to figure out what they should do with their footprints. I believe I read in the Business Journal this week that Houston's availability rate rose to 30% in the last quarter. Obviously, the class variation and what's available is a hindrance there. But what are we currently seeing in terms of demand for office space? Are you strategizing a little bit differently compared to years past? Matt, love to get your thoughts.
You know, I think at least what we've been seeing is it's really a story of winners and losers. If you're holding on to some old product that's allowed itself to get dated, that is kind of very conventional office, it's a hard slog. It's a real hard slog. If you have places that especially for the kind of businesses that are attracted to this, but if you have integrated, collaborative rooms and, these like kind of interstitial moments that are a little natural where you get some light and some, just much more, you've got great amenities down on the ground floor. There's some traction. We're seeing good traction. But I think that's going to continue. I don't think that that's necessarily a function of COVID.
Yeah, same thing. Try and get the team back together when it comes to the office tenants. They want their people to come back. Not to step on the toes of the previous panel, but it's all about getting people back into the office. And the easier that you can do that, the easier you can make it for the tenants to come back, the more likely you are to lease the space. I totally agree with Matt. That's a tale of two cities and the product types that we have out there in the city. And you look at stuff that is new vintage, it's fully leased, right? And then you look at the stuff built pre-86, it's not. And so you want new product, or the market wants new product, and then you want to get the people back into the office.
Well, I'm curious. I'm going to spin off of this a little bit. We didn't talk about this in our kickoff, so bear with me here. But coming out of the pandemic and over the last several months, I've started to personally feel like we've been getting back into some normalcy, seeing a lot of people in the office, and now with some of the recent news that we are heading into or are into a recession. Do you foresee some headwinds that over the next couple quarters, or is Houston, insulated from some of that? Anybody's willing to answer, but Ryan.
Well, I'll chime in here. As a co-working space where we offer everything from obviously just open co-working to offices that hold maybe teams up to, say, 20, 25, flexibility seems to be the name of our game, at least. We have a lot of our clients coming in and saying, okay, I need this much space now, but I've got this RFP out, and if I win that, I'm gonna have 5 more people, and where do I put them then? And are you gonna work with me on the term? And our answer is always yes, we will. And so I think that's gonna help us going into this recession as companies get a little nervous, maybe on their projections.
I think there's a level of insulation that Texas has in general. But, I mean, he can't come out and say it in public, but Powell's, and the entire point is to give the labor market headwinds. We got to cool it off. That's the only way we're going to tame inflation. That's literally the goal, is to get maybe 3 million people out of their jobs. I don't know if that's necessarily bad for office leasing. And you even heard the last panel speaking about this. I think a lot of us think that there's a level of it's a labor market, right? We need to get a little more control of that to be able to start establishing some terms to be able to get people back into the office. It's better it's not just better for our companies, it's better for the employees ultimately. That mentorship and that ability to grow and that ability, like the things that can really only happen in an office space, we all need it and we all know it. So I think that may in the midterm may actually help office leasing.
Super insightful. And Meredith, I'm going to piggyback off of a comment that you made in regards to the flex space and whatnot. We've been introduced to the concept of the hybrid work model, right? Whether that be 3 days in, 2 days out, certain workstations that you're sitting at, whatever you want to call it. I'm curious, as this becomes more embraced, I'm not going to say it's necessarily the normal, at least in my world, but it is getting more embraced. What initiatives are you taking in your worlds to tailor your products to meet this new tenant demand? Ryan?
Sure. At the Ion, I know we are, because we're investing in it. We're doing 2 things. The first is pre-builds, right? There's no secret that pre-builds do go faster, right? If the product's there on the shelf, people will grab it. And then the second is the Ion was designed pre-COVID, but it's been quite fortuitous that we have an abundance of meeting space. And so tenants say, look, I have 80 employees, 20 will come into work, but I need that space for when we want the whole gang together, for when we need the 80 people together for a day or 2 days. And fortunately at the Ion, we have that space, and really that was kind of the thesis of that investment in the Ion, to pull everybody together. Just so happens that that's where COVID has taken us.
Stephanie, I'm curious on the design side what y'all are seeing.
Well, it sounds a whole lot like what Meredith was just saying. It's the flexibility of what everyone's asking for and giving them that reason and to come into the office and really cater to them once they're there, so that we always say make going to the office a destination, not an obligation. And if you're going to do that, the flexibility is key, and it needs to be flexibility that the end user can adjust on their own, whether it's, like what we see down at the ION, you're able to move some things around on your own. It doesn't mean, oh, wait, come back tomorrow and we'll have our guys come in overnight and move a bunch of things around for you. And then also, it's a variety of places that you can find, so that, oh, wait, this space doesn't work, but I've got a space that does just down the hall. So the flexibility doesn't necessarily always mean that it has to move around, but it's just a variety of spaces.
I couldn't agree with you more, and then I'll just give you my perspective as well. As on the furniture side, everything has to be easily moved. We're seeing that a ton just on the furniture components, and then obviously the technology piece as well. How can people get into a space regardless of what furniture is in there or how many people it can hold? Hey, how can we easily get onto a screen, get onto a conference call, and do what we need to do?
Yeah,
right?
no, that technology piece is absolutely critical, and making it easy. Because every time you walk into a room, it's slightly different. At least that's what it feels like in most places. And being able to walk into a conference room or into a huddle space or a collaboration space and be able to confidently push the on button, pull up what's on your laptop or whatever your presentation, however you're presenting, and know that connection to the other side is going to work is huge. So we really are tasking our technology consultants right now to make life easy for us and make it easy for our clients.
You'd think that all the Teams and Zoom calls we've been on we'd know how to use it, and it'd be very simple, but it's not the case, is it?
Oh no, I had a go-to meeting the other day. Who's done a go-to meeting lately? I had to reload it on my laptop.
A new app that I have to add to my computer.
Yeah, please do not use Ring Central, anybody.
Well, we talk about the hybrid workspace. We would be remiss to not bring up co-working and having Meredith here. We have a pioneer in the co-working space here in the Houston market. Meredith, I want to congratulate you, first of all, on what you guys have done in the community that you've created. I am curious, obviously, you're going to have a very unique perspective on this, but what the future of co-working has. And I will say there are other co-working ventures here in town, some not as very specific as y'all, and you've done a phenomenal job at that. But I am curious to get your thoughts on, what does the future of co-working look like, and what needs to be done to create a space that fosters culture in a co-working environment?
Yeah, thank you so much. That made me blush. So I think the future of co-working, obviously it's here to stay. But the co-working spaces that are going to make it, it's more than just a physical space. It's more than just, hey, I have a room, I'll throw some desks in, and boom, it's co-working. So I think the ones that are going to make it, and I've got my notes here because I hate it. I get up here and I get a mic in my hand and I start blabbering on and like, I didn't mention anything I was supposed to talk about. So one is I think you need to, as a co-working space, be ready to adapt your space quickly based on what your clients are asking for. So it's that flex space that we were just talking about. You have a small conference room, a small collaborative space. In a jiffy, you need to be able to use that as a podcast recording studio if that's what your people are asking for. And the second thing that's going to help a co-working space survive is you need to know your audience really well. And as you mentioned, we have a super niche audience, but there's a lot of different ways that can be done. I know, Grant, that you guys have someone, does Bisnow co-work with y'all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll call it a co-working. They use our.
It is a co-working
That's
model,
right.
and
Kim.
I just met Ryan earlier, who was telling me about that. Hi, Ryan. So yeah, I think it's about knowing your audience, and Ryan was just very specific with the audience that you guys are serving, and that's the key. So the next question was fostering culture within a community, and I think it's going to start with your staff. Your staff has to reflect that culture internally in order to be able to share that with the community, to thus curate the community's culture as well. And the second thing that we do, and I'm just gonna share it, I don't know if this will help with anyone else, but maybe, is I think it's really important that you reflect your mission. And so our mission is all about uplifting and serving underrepresented communities and business. And so we give away co-working memberships left and right to nonprofits that are doing that same thing. And when those nonprofits come in and they're working and they're serving the community that meets our mission, they are bringing in people that they know who also believe in that mission, and then that just snowballs. So that's my thoughts on the future of co-working. It's not going anywhere. It's growing.
Can I hop on the Meredith is awesome bandwagon here? So,
Oh my God.
Look at what SESH has done is targeted a specific audience and create a place of belonging, right? And other products don't necessarily have that. We work on that at the Ion in very small ways, even with the artwork that's on the wall. What does the art represent to people? At SESH, it's, even beyond just belonging, it's trust and it's safety and it's people feeling, in basic terms, get rid of the ick factor that could exist in the office place. And that's an incredible place for people to really advance their businesses. So I compliment you and say it's a really great thing to have here in Houston.
Didn't expect this, Meredith, did you?
God, it's the
We can
Meredith
turn this
show.
into a
Y'all
Meredith session.
stop.
I'd like to.
Meredith fan club over here.
That's right. She'll sign autographs after in the lobby as well. I'd like to ask a question with this, with the current landscape of things. I think we've seen a lot of, whether it be really big companies, some smaller companies, starting to look at their footprints in general. I attested to that earlier. Some of those have taken their headquarters way outside of the loop per se. Others have invested and said, hey, we are invested into the inner city loop area. My question is urban versus suburban, right? What is the plan? What does the future look like here? And for this panel here, where are you focusing, and do you have a different approach working with one or the other? John, I'm going to start with y'all's team.
Yeah, so one of our portfolio companies is a title company, and we've got 10 offices and let's say 8 of them in suburban markets. We've struggled a lot with office in the suburban area, so we've had to opt a lot of times for retail space, which we all know the build-out's extremely expensive, the rents are more expensive, parking's a problem, and it's just not the right type of space that we like. So we've had to opt to start buying buildings and redeveloping, like Fulshire, Sealy. We just bought another building in Belleville. We'll buy one in Brenham. We've struggled like Katy, Cypress, you name it. I think the demand is there for more suburban office than probably we all realize. I mean, COVID's been part of it, but we had that problem way before. We've got other ancillary businesses in some of these markets too, where they've even come and said, hey, are you going to create offices or a weekend office there? And there's so many people out there that are still working from home in those markets. And I think a lot of the reason they're working from home is they just don't have an alternative and they don't want to come into the city. So they just kind of, bounce around, whether it's a coffee shop, their house. But I think there's a real need for it out in some of these more, call it suburban or even some of the more rural areas that I think there's definitely some opportunity. So we've experienced it firsthand.
Meredith, I'm curious to get your thoughts as you all look to eventually maybe expand, and you guys are in the Midtown area, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So is there thought to go out to some of these suburban areas knowing that maybe some of your clientele is moms who maybe live in those parts of the city?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hear all the time, when are you going to open up in Katy? When are you going to open up in Sugar Land? And I'm like, slow your roll. We just did 20,000 square feet Midtown. We got to breathe. But I think what our people are looking for is walkability and that mixed use area. I know us as SESH, that's not our forte. We don't want to build all of that. We'd much rather follow all of you guys who are doing that so well, and then we join you in there. So for now, we are urban, and then we do have our eye on some suburban options. But again, looking for that walkability, the gyms, the cool restaurants, the great coffee, all those things.
We'll certainly get into that here in just a moment. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. Stephanie, you got us started with kind of the evolving office, right? In the past, and I'm sure in your experiences, it's been office versus office. Who has the coolest culture? Who has the coolest this or that, architectural or furniture or whatever it is? Now it's just a competition between office and home. Some of these people have really cool at-home offices, apparently. Can't even get them to come back in. But what I'm curious is, how is Gensler and how is yourself creating a competitive advantage over this at-home office model?
We've done a bit of research, and actually what we have learned is, we've talked about highly amenitized spaces as being that magnet for bringing people back to the office. But what they're really coming back for are for the people. And so if you can, and there's a blog that's out there that says, you know, the new amenity are the people for our office space. And so if you can do whatever it takes to create that attraction, to get everyone to come back, everyone starts to just sort of follow. And it's not just because they're worried that they're going to be left behind or forgotten, but they want to be there. And I think one of my favorite examples has nothing to do with office space, but you remember when the Astros were in the World Series, and it was an away game. And people went to Minute Maid Park to sit together with a lot of people to watch the game because they love the energy, they love the excitement, and you just don't get that at home. And so I think you need to feed your soul with some of that kind of energy, and the best way to do that with your colleagues is to be with them and to be in the office.
Matt, how about from y'all's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. I think we spend so much of our daily lives talking about cap rates and about asset classes and about product types, and we forget that for the rest of the entire world, this is where they eat, where they live, where they work, where they commune, where they meet loved ones. This is where we live, and we forget to create. I'm super excited about where we are, and COVID didn't create this. This was always happening. This technology is allowing us to be able to look at office in a different way. Same thing happened with retail. That started happening with retail in 2012, and retail started trying to was back on its heels and trying to solve for it. After we come out of COVID, it's like, oh my God, I want to be around human beings. The office is the same exact thing. People want to be around other people, and it's its number one competitive edge over home. A recent Gallup poll came out and said that 72% of Americans describe themselves as lonely. And largely because of work, because we're working from home. But it's up to the employers to create jobs or to relook at how they approach work and create places that people enjoy wanting to be. I love what you said, that work needs to be a destination. And it's so true. And for us, creating places where that work is more compelling, more interesting, where we lean into our competitive edges that the home can never provide. And the number one is that opportunity to be mentored and to collaborate and to work with others and sometimes just to be around other people.
Sure. It's a great segue here for us as we start to turn our conversation now to the mixed use asset class, right? Not only as an office, we're trying to get people back in the office just from the collaboration aspect, but what's going on around the office? What else could we do as a culture, as a group of people? And so this whole idea that having a mixed use ability with office has become really key. Now, finding how you create the right mix of assets has probably been the struggle, or there is maybe not a silver bullet per se, but how does the office just play in creating this mixed use development? Ryan, I'm curious to you.
Yeah, sure. I guess there's a few key words here. There's synergies, right? The population of the office worker, where are they spending their time and their money? And there's efficiencies. So if you can create a parking structure, it's the car's world, we just live in it. If you can build that garage that allows other uses to also park there, you're saving, $25,000, $30,000 of space, maybe more if you're underground. And then it's all about diversification. And so when you look at if you looked at mixed use as an asset class, as its own asset class, and we looked at some data from JLL, and you have three asset classes, they're a 6 cap rate, a 6 cap rate, and a 6 cap rate across the board, you could sell that asset for $575. And so there's incredible investment opportunity when you look at something that's truly diversified, all bundled up into one package.
It's mind-blowing to me, to be honest with you. John, what about your group? How do y'all think about this?
Yeah, I mean, our take on it is we're not going to create the whole mixed-use development. So co-locating near other amenities, I think, is what's super important. It's an easy way to do it. It's a cheaper way to do it. And what we're trying to do is just figure out what amenities do we need in our building. I mean, we take the building like we're doing again, we talked about earlier, is like, I know a lot of guys have portfolio companies and they have board meetings. They have a board meeting once a quarter at the most when people come in. So, I mean, we made an amazing conference room that's a shared board room, and that's kind of the take on it. So when they have people here, it's super comfortable, highly amenitized there. Then we talk to our employees and the other employees, like, what do you guys want, and then what do you not want? And I mean, it's interesting, you ask about a gym, and everybody wants to add a gym. You ask everybody, are you going to use it? 95% said, I'm not going to use the gym in the office. It's like, we're going to go to our gym. It's here, here, here. But we're close to 4 or 5 gyms that are all super nice, or a club that they're a member of, and that makes it a lot easier. But I think really understanding, like, what do people really want that you're targeting, I think is the best. And then co-locating near, like, restaurants. We have a hike and bike trail right near us I think everybody loves. So then they were like, a couple of masks, can we get some bikes? I'm like, sure. I mean, such cheap ideas. It doesn't always have to be this big, grandiose idea where you spend a bunch of money or use up a bunch of space.
You know, Grant, I'll add to that. We've had the benefit of working with some very great clients, some of them sitting in this room today, to help create these very, very large mixed-use environments. And although it's a collection of these different components, it's all about placemaking. I know when we had our little huddle, everybody's like, ooh, placemaking, I need to check out the definition of that.
Please define it for everyone in this room.
But it's the nice collection of all of these parts, whether it's, you know, the live, work, play. I know that's overused, but it definitely is the live, work, play. But it's all those pieces in between, the spaces in between that really pull that mixed-use environment together. And it doesn't have to be suburban. There are vertical mixed-use environments. Our office, I would very much consider Houston Center a vertical, you know, mixed-use environment. There's retail at the base, there's the fitness center, there's rooftop terraces, there's office. There's no residential, but there's residential, you know, easily, you know, walkable distance. So, I do feel like the future of office is very much that mixed-use environment, whether it's vertical or horizontal. And the important piece is that glue, all those pieces in between that really want to attract people where they can come together with folks that may not necessarily be a part of their own organization and make some friends and carry on.
Can I piggyback off of that and maybe just dive into the next question? The placemaking that that Stephanie talks about, it's the interstitial spaces, right? And trees don't pay rent. And so how do you underwrite for something that is not part of a leasable space? And in Houston, when it comes to placemaking, we really only have 2 tools. We have tax reimbursements for these public spaces, and then we have the benevolence of high net worth individuals to create these spaces. And so if you are an investor and you're not accessing either of those 2 vehicles, you really need to believe in the value of the place that you're creating, because the underwriting of it doesn't say that it naturally should lease better, but the market is showing that that is the path forward, that to create this place where people want to be will create the value. And so hopefully more projects in Houston start to see that. It just takes a lot of patience and a very patient investor.
We're that exact strategy at the heart of our project. We're doing partners with Hanover, doing a project called Audrey Park. And when we came in, we just completely redesigned the ground plane for that and intentionally cut out quite a bit of leasable area to create little pockets of land, pockets of lushness, and to create little alleyways and paseos, just because what we realize is the theory and what it's come borne out to play on the retail level, cutting out some of that made the rest of it more interesting, and we could charge higher rents. We could pencil losing that GLA getting lost actually made the rest of it more valuable, and you just kind of have to look at it a little more creatively.
I'm curious to get your thoughts now. Y'all have got my mind churning here. I think in our industry, people want us to go. We need to develop, we need to do this, we need to purchase, and we need to go. I'm starting to see personally that we're starting to slow this down. People are seeking our advice a little bit more. Are you having more conversations around that type of idea to get people to think differently and to slow down this process that they've put us on? Or is it still the same pace? Hey, we gotta go.
At least in our experience, it's still, we gotta go. Which isn't necessarily bad, but what we have seen is that especially the more successful this strategy is, that creating especially with mixed-use developments, the more culturally rich, actually additive to your broader community you can make that, the more desirable it is of a place to live, and the more desirable it is a place to work. And so the ground plane, like real, genuine placemaking, adding all of those interstitial spaces and really making them compelling, wonderful places, it adds tremendous value to those vertical. So when you're going vertical, that also is another way that at least we've found that we can start penciling, adding in lots of green, lots of open spaces, lots of wonderful little moments for people to come and enjoy their life, that we reap the rewards in both our multifamily and in our office rents.
Very, very interesting. And we've talked a lot about this placemaking over the last few minutes here. We've talked about amenities. I am curious, just to get it out there, is what are specific amenities that you're seeing that are drawing tenants in, that are drawing people to certain areas that have been really, really successful for some of your clients? Ryan, you want to start?
Sure. Parking and food. Basic Houston human needs. Not at all creative, but let's dive deeper on that. It is all about, as you say, bringing the people back together. And so anything that can get one-on-one connections or even group connections are highly valuable at this point.
Yeah. Stephanie, what about from you?
Well, I was going to say, Grant, for us, when we sit down with a client and they're talking about where they want to move, I would say probably the first thing they ask us is there green space? Is there a rooftop terrace? Is there some place where they can go outside? And I agree with you, Matt. This wasn't a COVID or a pandemic thing. They were already asking for that. And yes, it's Houston, Texas. It does get hot and humid, but you know what? They still use those spaces. And the earlier panel talked about having the tunnel system kind of really killing the street life. And I think a lot of the buildings downtown are doing a much better job about engaging people and encouraging them to be at a street level. You look at what Hines did at Chase Tower and opened that up, and with their new building at Texas Tower, and people are calling us and saying, what can we do to really re-engage that street life again? But that if I had to pick one thing, they would probably say, the outdoor spaces. And you're right, Ryan. Parking is always, especially in this downtown area, that's always a big deal on how much parking is available. And at one time, the amenities would have included things like childcare, and that's actually really close to the bottom of the list now. But something that rises much closer to the top of the list is how close can I get to like a doctor's office? What are some of these other kind of amenities that are nearby that are going to help me be more efficient and effective during my day?
Meredith, I'm curious from y'all's perspective, what type of amenities are you guys introducing, or are you constantly thinking of new ideas of what you could be adding? I'm sure you're looking at competition. I guess, what are y'all looking at from an amenity standpoint?
Yeah, so we do a lot of by the hour options. So we also play in the world of event space rentals. So we have a lot of spaces that can be rented by the hour. One that we're playing with right now is, can we offer an hourly option for wellness providers? So chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists of that genre, because we're finding that a lot of our people want those services, and so we're playing with that as well. Also creative options, podcast studios, video production studios. Those are always very popular as well.
It's only getting, it's just the next thing, and who's doing it better and better and better each and every project. I'm curious, let's talk about some of the challenges. As we develop these mixed-use properties, they come with a lot of challenges. So, what are some of those challenges, and how do you decide on what the right use is for a certain project or development? John, I'm going to go ahead and start with y'all.
If anybody here is from the city of Houston, permits is a huge challenge. We do need a few, so.
Sitting on their hands.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a huge challenge for us, is if you take an existing property and we're trying to redevelop it, and it's not fitting in a black box, it's not black and white to everybody, then like the countless meetings we're having to try to interpret what they think is code, what we think is code, that's been a huge problem. And I mean, they want you to redevelop all these older buildings and do all this, but quite frankly, they just don't make it easy right now, and that's what we've run into a ton. I mean, if we bought an acre of land and we were just gonna build a building, so easy. Like, we can do that all day, but taking something like the round and round we've gone on parking with them and like everything else, and like amenity we think is a huge amenity, and we've asked our staff and you ask some other people, is safety. So we're trying to provide, like, whether it's perimeter fencing, lighting, this, you know, and trying to get parking where it's more safe for people at night or in the mornings early. And it's just round and round on that. So, I mean, the redevelopment, I mean, they've got to look at it a little bit different way. If they want us to reuse existing buildings and everything else, they've got to find a way to maybe work with us a little bit better. But it's been a huge frustration for us. We've tried to get a permit for 9 months, and we're still not there. It's all over parking. Everything else is approved, but we're arguing over 4 parking spots and how they want us to configure them. And we can't set a meeting or anything. It's time, it's money, I mean, everybody here has probably dealt with it, but this is the worst I've ever seen.
Ryan, what about from y'all's end?
I agree on the patience aspect, but I'm going to talk a little bit differently about patience. It's patience to create the critical mass. And when you look at the Houston context, the city's freckled, right? There are very few pockets of critical mass, of walkable places in this city. And so you need investors and developers that have the patience, that are willing to create that critical mass so that the market will come to it. We do a lot of studying of other mixed-use projects in other markets. Colleague Bryson and I went to Tampa a few months ago. I never thought I would go to Tampa in my life, was pretty sure of that, but went to Tampa. Blown away. Who knew? Tampa, such a cool city. There's a project there called Water Street, right? And they have the fortune of having Bill Gates as its lead investor, right? But Bill Gates is thinking multi-generationally about his wealth. And so that project built that critical mass, and it is absolutely crushing the market there. It is such a huge home run, and it does an incredible job of placemaking. And so we look at these places in other markets. How do they create the critical mass? Because our project at the Ion District and eventually in Rice Village, we need that critical mass to drive the market.
Never thought that I'd have Bill Gates reference in our panel today. Thank you for that. It is a great segue, though, to talking about some specific projects here in Houston. I am curious, and I'd love to hear from each of you, if possible, as talking about, is there a project that you have seen, you've been a part of, this is your chance to talk about maybe one of your own, but that you've seen that caught your attention that's just extremely innovative in bringing people back to the office. Meredith, I'm going to start on the end.
Okay.
Caught her by surprise.
So I mentioned that we finished the last phase of our co-working space, and that's what I'm going to talk about because we're still trying to breathe and resettle now that that's done. So we have 20,000 square feet, and it's beautiful, if I may say myself. All the walls are adorned with local art from local artists. We have a really cool pop-up shop in there. We have all kinds of offices sizes, but we're really proud of it. We have 80% leased upstairs, and we're sitting at 60% downstairs, which is pretty impressive because the downstairs was just opened 3 months ago, and we run our entire company on a team of 5. So I'm pretty proud of our work. I think y'all all should come see it. I'll give you a personal tour.
John?
Yeah, I guess I'll put a plug in for us too. So the building that we bought that we were complaining about as well was actually built like in the late 50s by 2 guys that actually won the Masters. They built it as a bowling alley, and then when we bought it, it was a gun range and a church together. So only in Texas would you get that, but you know, yeah, it would actually have the sign that said parking for church and gun range only. Wow. But what we've tried to do is like if you think about like when we all travel, you do all the research on TripAdvisor, wherever you go, and you like look for a cool resort, or you go to dinner, you look for a cool restaurant. Like mention like rooftop terraces and all kinds of cool outdoor spaces, and like I think what we've tried to take an approach with our building, and like we're obviously officing there too, is like we all want to go to those places, but why would you have an office where you don't want to go to? So if trying to bring more of that in, whether it's textures and different, building out an amazing kitchen space where everybody can hang out, and just really trying to listen to the employees and ask them what they want. And that's what we've tried to do with that, and then just make it feel more like you're on a cool trip or at a cool restaurant as opposed to, okay, we're back at the office again, which we've all worked in. And if you think back, you spend so much time there. It's like, why would you not have a comfortable, enjoyable space? So that's kind of been our take on it.
When you ask that question, my default would be to our project, Autry Park. I'm really proud of it. It's really exciting. But it's like some of the best dirt in all of Houston, and we've got one of the best master developers, as our partner in Hanover. It's just do that right. It's basically don't F it up. Is the word of the mission. Where I'm really excited about our project in the suburbs is Sugarland Town Square. And Sugarland Town Square, I think almost everybody in the broader Houston area knows it, but it allowed itself to get very dated and develop an opinion of not being, having gotten on the wrong side of history and being on the wrong time. It's just been on secular decline for a few years. And coming into that, and during COVID, the strategy to turn that around, it requires so much innovation and creativity, and it's actually turned out to be quite fun, and also a lot of trust, because it's not just Sugarland Town Square. It's not just a mixed-use development. I mean, it's really the heart of that city. It's where City Hall is. And so we've, over the past 2.5 years of just constant hard work, inching forward, moving the chains, you're starting to see like all of the new landscaping, creating beautiful, like really leaning into the walkability of the district, event strategy, like adding hospitality into, especially up into the office. How do we modernize that to raise our offense tendency there? There's just a ton of creative strategies that we have to use to really turn that around, and it's really rewarding.
I'll comment on that real quick. I spent a lot of time down there with my in-laws personally, and my in-laws are very much homebodies. And the revival of that has allowed them to say, hey, let's get the heck out of here and start bouncing around. I saw a new restaurant, or I saw a new this or that and the other. So you guys have done a phenomenal job.
Just you wait, man. Next couple of years. I'm really, really excited about what we're doing. It's very rewarding.
Stephanie, how about yourself?
Sure, I'll continue the shameless plug train as well. So
that's why you're all on the panel. That's okay.
No. Honestly, one of my favorite projects, and I'm very much a part of it, is our move to Houston Center and working with Brookfield to completely redevelop basically 4 city blocks, if you will. And we were fortunate that they own all of those buildings, and so and I don't know who's familiar with it, but if you've ever walked through there before they started the work, it was a maze. It was hard to figure out, and they numbered it like, okay, this is Houston Center 2, only go to Houston Center 1, and then go to Fulbright Tower, and 4 is across the street. So all those things was a challenge. And the buildings really, they were never designed to be office buildings, by the way. I mean, that ground plane, for those of you who don't know, was designed to be a transit center when Houston was supposed to have this massive monorail system that worked downtown and connected all the buildings, and that's why it actually crosses over the street like it does. And so it just made it challenging to try to figure out how to do that. And when we had the opportunity to work on that, we said we really need to open this back up to the city and give it street presence, give it life again. Because when we talked to Brookfield, we told them, we said, you have the perfect name. It's Houston Center. Let's make it Houston Center. And what was really cool to see happen was the construction started, and everybody's like, oh, this is terrible, it's noisy, it's dusty. And then, there are silver linings to a pandemic. Everybody got sent home. And they came back 2 years later to a completely renovated, office building and lobby, and they're like, wow, this place is super cool. And now they're not having the issues that some other tenants are having, trying to get everybody to come back to the office, and thankfully they didn't have to live through all of the noise. But just watching how, thankfully the city of Houston did let us take up one of the lanes, which I don't know how we managed to pull that one off, but we did, so we could make that plaza area bigger. I've seen a number of nonprofit events take place down there. One of the fun ones is the American Heart Association. They did their spin class down there. It was just, anyway, all kinds of fun. So just developing a program for that place down there, giving it go back to the placemaking idea, and still really excited to see what's going to happen at 4 Houston Center. If you go there right now, it is pretty much a war zone because it's under construction, but just bringing life back to all 4 of those city blocks. And I think the most important piece to all of it is it's this really nice artery now that runs from what they did at Allen Center all the way down McKinney, all the way down to the convention center, because we have all of these all of the folks coming into town who are staying at the Marquee or staying at the JW or staying, at any of the hotels around there, and they're looking for something to do. And McKinney can now become this main artery that basically connects one side of downtown all the way to the other, back to the convention center. And I think the conventions are coming back, but as soon as that's all complete, I think you're going to find that McKinney is now going to compete for being the street in Houston as opposed to Louisiana.
And if you haven't seen Gensler's new office, holy smokes. It is beautiful and has the coolest lobby I've probably seen in town. So,
and like Meredith, I'll give a personal tour to anybody who wants one.
Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, sure. We're going all in on a hybrid asset class, which is a gun range and a church, and that's where we're going all in.
Are you announcing this today, here and now?
Rice's $7.9 billion endowment, all in.
All in one.
We need to resurrect this. It's a very important thing for our
Congratulations,
culture.
everybody. You heard the breaking news.
No,
right.
Please don't tell my boss. No, I guess a shameless plug, but for our tenant at the Ion District, Greentown Labs. And thank you to the mayor, thank you to GHP for recruiting Greentown Labs to have their second location here in Houston. We were fortunate to win an RFP to have them come to the Ion District. They are focused on the future of energy. This city needs to be focused on the future of energy, and it's great to have 300 incredibly bright people thinking about new businesses right there in the Ion District to think about how our economy will survive the next 50 years.
Very, very nice. We're going to wrap up here. Final question for you. We did not talk about this on our intro call, so bear with me here. But a lot of you come to this to see and get their opinions on what does the future look like. That was the whole theme of us today, right? So we're going to call this the crystal ball question, okay? I can barely look at what the next week looks like, okay? But I'm going to ask you to look 5 years into the future. And what does the future of the office look like 5 years from now? And I'd like to hear from everybody as we wrap up here. Ryan, I'm putting you on the spot after your comedic performance.
I thought if I avoided eye contact, I'd...
This guy.
What does it look like? In Houston, it's far more diverse. It's capitalizing on a lot of latent talent in this city. And I think that's a great thing for the city.
I think for me, we have a lot of energy clients in this city, and I think the future of work is going to reflect a lot of their future advancements that we just don't know what they are now. I mean, like you mentioned, that group coming together at the ION, and we can't get past the fossil fuels just yet, but that doesn't mean that we don't have high goals to try to get to as much of a net zero world as we can by, I think we've given ourselves that deadline of 2030, and it's coming fast and furious. But I think a lot of those advancements, what happens in that arena is going to impact what the future of work really looks like for us. And because I think people they're going to come to work wherever they are, whatever they do. It's going to be a nice place to be, somewhere you want to be with your friends and colleagues. But I do see that there's a lot happening in that arena. It's still very much in the baby stages, and how ultimately if this city could get a shot in the arm from having some great things happen in that sector, I think that'll be transformational.
Yeah, I'm a kind of, especially as you look, I think the next few years we're gonna all be kind of figuring it out. But I think 5 years down the road, I'm just kind of the forever optimist. I think that this is actually a really good thing for just work in general and for the office class specifically. It's going to require innovation and lots of creative, like kind of re-examining what that means, what that asset class needs to be able to do. And I think that that's going to lead to just better office, better places to be. And I'm really excited about it. And I think that we'll reap the rewards. By about 5 years, we'll start reaping the rewards of that, where we'll see office tenancy increasing, those rents really going up for the ones that are doing it really, really well. I think they're going to be reaping the rewards pretty intensively by 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've looked at now is like on any spaces that we're going to develop or anything we're going to do is creating flexibility. And what we mean by flexibility is like future solar, making sure you can take the weight on the roof, stubbing out for that kind of stuff, or whether it's, plugins for vehicles, things that you may not need to do right now or you might consider, but, we've put all that stuff in our office now. And then, with the tax credits and stuff coming down for solar, I mean, if you've got the ability to look at it now, if you do own a building, I would highly recommend you take a look. As we found that like with power prices where they are, coupled with the tax credits, like it's actually become an attraction standpoint for the tenants too, knowing that we've got stable power prices, as we're able to do about 75 to 80% of our energy consumption, or at least that's what we've modeled. And then we've even set it up now where if we want to expand that going forward and do covered parking and bring more solar in there, you could do that as well. And I think Houston, I agree as a whole. I mean, we have a vibrant oil and gas business, so we're by no means Bible beating renewables over here. But energy as a whole in Houston, really embracing that as the energy capital, can provide so much stability for our market. And like right now, I think that's one thing that's going to help us get through a downturn. And you know, there is so much money getting poured into the renewable space, whether it's on carbon capture or even on the solar, wind, not so much. We see it now, but battery storage. We're now developing 5 battery storage things on land we own that we thought was going to be a master plan community or other things. So, I mean, this is stuff 2 to 3 years ago. I didn't even know what battery storage meant. And now it's like we've done 3 utility scale solar deals. We've done that. And it's like it's changing so fast that the more we embrace it and think of it as we're the energy capital of the world, I think it's a much better place for all of us.
I'll speak more hyper locally to the Midtown area in Houston. I think that it's going to look like a brand new neighborhood in 5 years. We finally, I say we, I didn't have anything to do with it, but TxDOT finally finished the construction on Caroline Street. They're revamping many of the roads in Midtown to include bike lanes, to include more beautiful landscaping where there may have been none before. And there's quite a few big apartment complexes going in. It looks like there's some new mixed use coming in, some retail, and I've seen some restaurants as well. So I think there's a lot coming to Midtown. I'm really excited because with the Ion district growing, and it's so cool to see what's happening there, and us being just 4 minutes down the road, I think Midtown's gonna just become the innovation district and get swallowed in, which I'm happy with. And then I guess the other thing I would say is that if we're not all coming to work with robot pets in 5 years, I'm gonna be sorely disappointed. So that's my crystal ball.
What a way to end it right there. Robot pets. Well, I want to thank each of you for your time. This was extremely insightful. Thank you to Kim and Bisnow for allowing us this platform to share this insight. And thank you all for joining us today. This has been a pleasure. Have a great week, everybody, and thank you so much again.
Well said. Round of applause, and go Astros. Y'all have a great day. Thank you so much for being here.